Coming up on this week's FAS TV, we are in Skye visiting Dun Flashadder Croft to hear from Aoife Gould and Jake Sayles about how they are diversifying their income from the croft through sales of their homegrown mutton and pork. Aoife and Jake have decided to go down the route of finishing their animals rather than selling them as stores to produce and sell their own pork and Hebridean mutton. Alongside the mutton, Aoife and Jake are utilising the wool from the sheep to produce and sell felt accessories.
My name's Aoife Gould, this is Jake Sayles, this is our daughter Corin, and we croft on the Isle of Skye in Kildonan. Our backgrounds are not really in agriculture. We came to it, I don't say later in life, but inspired through this one, but yeah.
I have been living on Skye for about 13 years and I have been working around the agricultural industry for about 17 years. I also grew up around it, I guess. My father did the same work as me in NFU Scotland and NFU Mutual. So once we moved to Skye and then we bought our house here in Flashadder, we were lucky enough to get the opportunity to take over a croft from some friends of ours who wanted to step back and retire. And since then, lots of people have kind of seen what we've done and asked us to graze their crofts as well. So whilst most of the crofts are in Kildonan here, we also graze all the way over to Gould, and then we've got crofts in Aoife as well that we use. So we've usually got a trailer on most weekends, just shifting sheep from one place to another.
Basically, we'll take land anywhere that anyone's willing to let us graze.
Life as a crofter in Skye, very varied, although wet and cold and muddy in the winter. I think you could probably say that across the entire island. For us, we're probably practicing a slightly different kind of crofting because we're finishing animals rather than selling store, which is the main output for most crofts in the area. We've also got slightly different breeds, so a slightly different program to try and take care of them. But for us, it's about trying to make sure we're out with the animals every day, because the more use they are to us, the easier it is to gather them and manage them. And that's what we really have to do, is try and minimise the management time. Because we're working other jobs, it's difficult to spend a long time. We want to try and spend a short time and do the same amount of work.
When we were approached by friends and neighbours of ours who already had a flock of Hebridean sheep, and they offered to mentor us because they knew that we were interested in getting into crofting but needed the practical skills. So part of the reason that we croft the way we do is because what we sort of inherited with the Hebrideans, but we think that they suit this land. It's really rough, it's not particularly lush grazing or anything like that. They grow slowly, they don't grow to a massive size, so they're really gentle on the ground. And so for us, the management of the land is really important. But if we were to try and take Hebrideans to the store ring, we'd get, handfuls of pounds, and it just wouldn't be economically viable. It would really be paying to have a hobby of crofting, basically. So through a lot of hard work and kind of contacts that Jake already had with chefs and restaurants, as well as kind of just individuals, we kind of felt that finishing and selling the meat kind of direct to the end customer was, for us, the better opportunity to make it pay for itself, basically.
Yeah, I think we've always really been interested in food, eating it as well as cooking it. Now we're growing it, so we wanted to try and give as much honour to the animals as we can, which is why we really love the output being local food for the communities that we live in, people able to buy it and hopefully enjoy it. And then the fleece products was a natural segue from that, because the wool was worth nothing. We really want to give a value to what the animals produce because of the work they do for us on the land. So that's been a big element of our ethos, is really trying to use as much of the animals as we can and honour them for all the work they do for the land.
Yeah, and also the food that comes into our house. If we're going to have meat on the table and we have the opportunity to have that be from animals that we raise, that we see every day, we know exactly what land they're on, we know what they're getting fed, we know how they're being kind of looked after, then we recognise how incredibly lucky we are to have that opportunity, because the vast majority of folk don't. So we kind of we really acknowledge that is a big part of it, as well as for for our own table, you know.
Always been interested in native breeds, I think, before having sheep, and I guess once learning how they graze the ground, the type of ground that we have, and what they produce for species and biodiversity, that's what really kept us interested in them. And then once we tasted the meat as well and realised what food comes off the back of them as well, that kind of solidified it, I think. We did think originally, I had a bit of a dream that we'd run 2 flocks, because I was quite interested in herdwicks as well. But after a bit of crofting, I realised that 1 flock, 1 breed was enough for now, whilst we're learning what we needed to do. So, and that was the same choice for the pigs that we have as well. Really wanted an animal that was going to be tough on the ground, because that's what we wanted the pigs to do, was the bracken control. And actually asked the butcher that we use what would be the best pig meat to sell, because we wanted to try and have a quality product. And he said, without hesitation, the Mangalitzes. So that's kind of what's informed what we've got so far. And when we have bees, they're usually Skye bees, I believe. Although that's a very new venture. Sheep overgrazing, I think, is something that does happen. I don't think there's any denying of that. Cattle as well. And I think it's all about availability of land. Certainly for us, we can get to the point sometimes where you can be close, or if not, have overgrazed a field. We're lucky that the croft and the ground that we use is separated into lots of little fields, so we've got much more of ability to move them and rotationally graze that way. And we really try and work hard on that, because it definitely produces the best benefit for the ground and the grasslands and the species that are in it. But then also, as a natural consequence for that, we've got better feed for the sheep as well, so it makes an awful lot more sense for us to move them more regularly.
Yeah, so what we try and aim for is kind of quite intense grazing over a short period of time, and then as long a period of rest as we can manage, because you know what we're really passionate about is that we feel that we're just stewards of the land, you know, and I mean particularly at the moment, you know, we're just seasonal grazers of all of it, but what we're really keen to do is leave the land in a better condition than we got it, so more organic matter in the soil, better plant biodiversity things, and we're also really lucky with the land that we have available to us. You know, it's never been ploughed or reseeded or any of these things, so it's already, you know, very species-rich grasslands. And I've also been working with Nature Scott for 3 or 4 years now. Time I was still working for SAC, and through that we were looking at a project with work about getting a pilot study, looking at what the future of agri-environment support would look like, and we then were very lucky to be taken on as participants in that pilot, even after leaving SAC. And yeah, it's just been kind of various ongoing and changing projects over the years with them.
What really interested us was finding out what's on the ground, what's in the ground, what's also you know, getting benefit from the land aside from our animals and us. That really helped give us quite a holistic view on what we're doing, and I think gave us a lot of encouragement about the style of grazing that we wanted to have. So that felt great, gave us great confidence in it. And we enjoyed that a lot.
And I think the kind of educational part that came with working with Nature Scott, which, you know, had workshops and learning on how to identify plants and how to survey and things, you know, personally speaking, I think a lot of other folk felt the same. It was really empowering, you know, before, and particularly because this isn't my background, I would just look at a field, you know, grass, it's green, that's what's in that field kind of thing. But the more you learn and see the amazing diversity that we have in our fields, you know, we have nearly 40 target species across the land that we graze, which is, I mean, it's great, it's really exciting for us, and yeah, just that learning, knowing more about the land that you're on every day, I think it's such an important part of why involving crofters much more in the development of kind of policy is so important, because these are the people that are on the land, and certainly a lot of crofters have more knowledge than we do by a long way of their own land.
One great moment that boosted my ego significantly was we had some of the Nature Scott folk round and some of the people on the project and one of their experts, and I asked him what else we needed to do to try and increase biodiversity on the croft, and he said, nothing, you need to just keep doing what you're doing. Which was wonderful to hear. So we're going to keep doing that, basically. So the reason why we decided to expand from the sheep into the pigs was really about the land, as that's what we try and make guide all of our decisions. So the biggest issue we have here land-wise is bracken control. Now we were able, through again working with Nature Scott, to get a bracken basher, which we can use on anywhere I can drive the quad bike. But on parts of the hill like we're at here, and like you would have seen in the footage earlier, there's just no way of getting a machine safely up and down it. Also, because we've got the sea just behind us here, when Azulix was available, we weren't really interested in spraying because we didn't want to have any risk of the chemical coming down the hill into the sea. So for us, pigs came about because we were racking our brain trying to think, how can we disturb the steep hills enough to cause damage to the bracken to try and knock it back, basically, because you know, in a lot of places in the north of Scotland it just becomes an absolute monoculture and there's almost nothing living underneath it. And we really want to encourage that diversity by getting rid of the bracken. So that's where the pigs came about. The breed that we had came about through a bit of research, but to be honest, thinking about the byproduct, which would be the meat coming from the pigs when they've done their job with the land, it was through talking to our butcher at Forbes Farm Fresh, and he said this breed Mangalitsa were the best pork you could get. So I said okay, and found a pedigree dealer, Matthias in Aberfeldy, and yeah, we've been learning about pigs ever since. I think the biggest change was that although through most of the winter we do feed the sheep, with the pigs we've got to feed them every single day because they will not get the nutrition and the feed out the ground alone. So it's a lot of work, you know, it's difficult planning trips away and things like that, and constantly having to make sure you feed them every single day, make sure you get the water out because they drink a lot of water as well. That's been the most challenging bit, and working out how you keep pigs in while still moving an electric fence, that's been an interesting challenge for me. But I have loved having them, honestly. They're incredible characters. Unfortunately, I've got to know them probably a bit too well because of where they're ending up at the end of next month. But I think they've done an incredible job on the land, I really do. And I'm hoping showing FAS round today, you can see some of the efforts they've put in. So yeah, real learning curve, but enjoyed having them a lot. Be the end of March this year is when these are going to their final destination. Once we get the produce back from the butcher, Gus, over at Nairn Way, we'll be selling it locally. Probably to our regular clients, to be honest. People that buy the hogget from us, want to give them first shot. Some of our friends and things like that. And also what's really important to us is putting enough in the freezer that we can feed ourselves. I don't think there's any point growing food if you're not eating the stuff you grow. And it would be lovely to reduce our reliance on the supermarket and getting pork that's coming from who knows where. I know where these guys have been pretty much every day of their lives, so yeah, it'll be a difficult final journey, but we're hoping we can get a great use of the land out of them and people can really enjoy the meat. And why we needed pigs and the sheep wouldn't do the same job is the sheep, and especially the native breed Hebrideans that we have, are fantastic graziers, but with the bracken being here for so long, it's really woody, it's really hard, and it's really embedded in the root structure underneath the ground. And that's just something that, unless we were incredibly intensively grazing the sheep, which would be a huge amount of effort for us and not very much fun for the sheep, I just don't think sheep can ever, on a steep hill, really make a big impact in bracken. So the power of these pigs is what's really rooting underneath the ground to try and disturb that root structure, try and damage it and stop any nutrients going down into the structure to try and kill off parts of the bracken. So, and what's been incredible to see, and I just can't get over it, is how these big animals, especially with the size they're at now, how nimble they are on steep hills. They really have been going over every part and every steepest bit. The bit we were just feeding them at there, unbelievable. You know, they really are all-terrain vehicles and getting places that a machine just can't. So I am excited to see how the ground looks over the next sort of 2 years, see what comes back and see what an impact they've had. And I think we're not gonna have pigs for the next year because I think the ground needs a rest. But I think we might get pigs back again to do one more job on the bracken, and also probably because in a year's time I'm gonna miss them. So I'll need to get them back because I'll be missing having pigs by then.
So when we initially took on the croft, we've been lucky enough to be mentored by our friends, and they brought in shearers to shear their flock, and they sold fleeces for not very much money, because wool doesn't really have a particularly high commercial value, and particularly Hebridean wool, because it's such a dark colour, it doesn't take a dye, so that reduces its value even further. And it's also quite coarse. And when we took the croft though, when it kind of got passed on to us, it was actually February 2020, which we all know lockdowns came pretty soon after that. So we were a bit stumped about what to do with quite a lot of things, but actually it turned out to be a real opportunity for us because we couldn't get shearers. Jake took it on himself to learn how to shear. I've done shearing courses since as well, so 5 years later we shear our own flock. We sometimes help out with friends as well, and on the wool side, because we literally couldn't get rid of it, it wasn't being accepted by the wool board, and we didn't want to just leave it to rot in a field or set fire to it, which a lot of crofters and farmers were basically forced into doing because they couldn't get rid of it, or it was costing them so much to get rid of it that it was cheaper to do that. I decided to just look on the internet, see what Hebridean wool was good for, and through sheer luck it turns out that it's one of the best breeds of sheep to felt with. So I spent that year just experimenting, just for ourselves, really to stop it being a waste product. We weren't thinking about this being anything that would necessarily add to the croft business side of things, but I love it and it works really well, and it's actually become something that I'm really passionate about, and something that we've invested a lot in to become quite an important part of our croft business. Come to the kind of system that I have now for making things. So when our sheep are initially shorn, this is part of one from a first shearing, which I love because you can see it's kind of little blonde tips. When they're shorn, we then soak the fleeces in sort of what's called a swint bath. It's like sheep's lanolin and their sweat create a natural soap. So they get soaked in that, which smells very bad. And then once it's rinsed and dry, you can tell, so these are all different. The colour change here isn't because of the processing, that's just the natural differences in Hebridean fleeces. This is then what's called picked, so it's basically pulled apart so that the fibres are kind of loosely kind of held together, and then I'd use this, which is a drum carder, and that basically brushes all the fibres so they're all lying in the same direction, which is what you have here. And from here you could go on, you could do, you could spin it into yarn, but what we do here is we felt it. But felting is, at its core, using agitation to bind, wool fibres together. They have wee barbs that kind of hook onto each other. And so what I do is I lay out carded wool onto what we call resists. They're sort of pattern pieces really, lay it out in various layers, use water soap and very gentle agitation to kind of bring it together so it's a fabric essentially, and you can make amazing three-dimensional things with it. But I quite like making practical items that I think are also beautiful. So the kind of things that I make are tea cozies, like these, and kind of wee ones. In fact, this was the first small thing that I made because Jake kept on setting our tea cozies on fire, so I had to replace them. Things like the cup cozies and little bird nesting pods, I think they're all really beautiful. But one of the, I think, most exciting things that we do is full felted rugs, which is essentially, it's used the same as a sheepskin rug, but on the back it's felted rather than the skin. So although we do, we raise our animals for meat, we're very passionate about that. What this allows is, you can get potentially 10 rugs from one yow, over the course of her life, sort of thing. And yeah, it's just a great way to take what was entirely a waste product that we could not find a use or an outlet for, and it's now becoming, a real value-added enterprise for the croft, basically, yeah. So in terms of selling the felt products that we have had some of the smaller items in local gift shops in Portree, some of the like cup cozies and tea cozies and things, and some of the rugs too, but also just online through kind of social media and things. But particularly for this year, now that we've quite heavily invested in this workshop, that's going to be something that we're working on a lot, is getting new outlets, both physical and online, for the felted project, and hopefully this year starting teaching workshops on how to do this as well, which is quite exciting.
So my main form of income is through another self-employed business, which is my NFU Mutual insurance agency, which is really what pays the bills, and that's the 9 to 5 Monday to Friday. And then the other element of it, which ties in with the crofting side, is NFU Scotland, so administration of membership and helping with lobbying and such like. All quite high stress, quite high pressure, quite hard work, quite long hours. So the funny part about that is that I probably get a release from that every day with the hour and a half of crofting that I do. But then I also need another release from the crofting pressure as well now, as we've grown. And you know, crofting can be quite high consequence, as we all know. You're making decisions about animals. I'm lucky enough on Skye that there was a rugby club formed coming up for 3 years ago now. So at the grand old age of 38, I decided to begin playing rugby for the first time.
Not recommended.
Just heading in, I'm going to be 40 later this year, and I'm hoping to play next season as well. And rugby's been fantastic, fitness-wise. It's a great focus, and also the camaraderie. You know, I think one of the most challenging things in agriculture and in crofting is an awful lot of what you do is by yourself. You're on your own. You're having to make decisions, deal with things by yourself. And I think what being part of the sports team in the rugby club has given me is that I'm not just on my own. Someone else can be in charge. You're part of a wider team. So the kind of banter, the fitness, the crack, the friendships, the relationships, it's really helped me a lot in the last couple of years with my own mental health. I'm quite anxious. I'm quite low self-esteem. Always have been. Used to be shy as a mouse when I was in school. So yeah, I found the rugby incredible. Only downside to it is maybe now that I'm older, I get injured a lot easier, maybe, and the recovery takes an awful lot longer. But there's some real transferable skills between a sport like that and the physical work on the croft, I think. So it's great for me physically. It's even better for me mentally.
And we've been really lucky that we've had quite a lot of instances of like some of the rugby lads coming and helping unload hay and kind of things like that, and they're just like really keen to get stuck in. So yeah, the kind of the camaraderie is, I think, by far the most amazing thing that's brought to us. Yeah,
I think the nice thing is you're getting folk who don't really know much about growing food and agriculture out. So some of them had never seen shearing before, or they'd never grabbed a sheep before, or you know, they'd never picked up a bale of hay before. So it's been incredibly enjoyable sharing that part as well.
So yeah, for me, I am part of a project called Grass Sealing, which I was really lucky to get a place on just over 2 years ago now. I was sent an email by a former colleague of mine saying, I think you should check this out. And it's a Europe-wide project which is kind of focusing on rural female entrepreneurs and what obstacles there are for them, but also what works, and sharing best practice in our WE group and also across Europe as well. And there's quite bespoke kind of business guidance, and it's been absolutely phenomenal. Like with the felting business particularly, I think, imposter syndrome and, it's just something that I enjoy doing. Why would anyone pay for it? These kinds of things go through your head, but yes, there's 9 of us in the Scottish group, and there's Scotland's first vegetable seed producers in decades are in it. There's kind of standard crofters as folk doing kind of goats and pigs in interesting ways. There's outdoor pursuits. And it has been so inspirational sitting with this group of women, and you know, from the first session when we were all nervous and all thought, you know, you could see around the room that everyone had the same kind of imposter kind of thing going on, and yeah, seeing where everyone has gotten to now is really inspirational. The network, the kind of, you know, we've got a WhatsApp group where, you know, we're in touch and we kind of show what we're doing, and if we're having a bit of a low time, it's been fantastic being able to connect in those kinds of ways, and having a network that isn't necessarily geographically close, but it's having the opportunity to have that network be created with us. And yeah, we're in our last year of it now, which is a bit daunting. So it's kind of looking at how we can carry it on and maybe bring those networks into our own communities a bit more, because I think, again, you know, as Jake was saying, isolation in these rural communities is a huge factor, and particularly finding networks of people who are doing similar things to you when geographically there may not be anyone that close that is doing the same. It's just been such an amazing opportunity. Something that's really important for us kind of across the board is letting folks see, you know, what crofting and food production actually is like, because I think it's easy to forget sometimes that if you're not in this landscape, you know, people are so far removed from food production and, you know, the lifestyle that it takes to raise livestock, particularly. That yeah, something we try and do as much as we get the opportunity to is to just show what daily life is like, and we've done that with doing workshops with RET, which is the Royal Highland Education Trust. Like, I've done Meet the Farmer things with kids. You know, Jake with social media, I think almost daily is getting some form of video of the day-to-day life of the croft on there.
Yeah, I think the other side of it that was really important, aside from that from us, is it's how we can sell our products. Yeah. So we don't have a website yet, mainly because being on Facebook and Instagram is really given us the audience we needed so far. Plus, I don't know, it just felt like a real chore creating a website, trying to get anyone to do it for us.
Because that's
let down a couple of
not where
times.
our skill set lies.
Yeah. So yeah, selling our products has been wonderful through it. We've had a lot of interest, and people like seeing what goes on, hopefully. And it's not just grey, wet, windy days with me trudging about in mud talking about sheep.
And the feedback we get on social media from the meat and things particularly is, you know, when folk are cooking the meat and things, they'll, you know, send pictures to our page and things. It's that kind of feedback and that relationship that's created with people that we don't know day to day, but you know, they're invested in our croft, and obviously we love the fact that they appreciate the food and enjoy it. So
So if you want to check us out, Dun Flashadder Croft on Facebook and Instagram. And come and see this face every day. And this face sometimes. And this one when she lets me put her on film.
Yeah. Something that we're really lucky to have, and for Jake and I particularly, it's something that we love, the fact that we're involving corn in this, and it's definitely all about, you know, the future and things. And Corn has been inspired by some of the things that we do in the croft, some of the animals we keep, and has started making her own products as well, which is another diversification line from the croft, which is all very important. So we have cards that are all kinds of holiday themes, but all sheep inspired from our croft. We've got key rings that are all sheep as well, bookmarks, and the most recent one, because we didn't have hens for quite a while, but we've just got hens back and have a real load of eggs. So we've got a new logo here of our Dun Flashadder eggs proper cheery chicken. And yeah, so far, folk have been loving them. So yeah.
And how have sales been going so far? Good? Could you use a few more sales?
No more sales. Corin has been so supported in her enterprise that even our postie, Sonia, who's the loveliest, she brought card making materials so that Corin could make more cards. So yeah, in terms of overheads, pure profit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just
what are you going to
absolutely
spend the money on that you get from Corin's cards business?
Toys.
On
It's the farming charity.
Oh, RSABI, I forgot you were raising money
Yeah,
for
because it's
RSABI.
split between
Oh,
RSABI and
toys.
toys. Yeah,
Good.
the important things in life.
So if anyone wants a card, get in touch with Corin or her parents. We'll hook you up. Is that right? Is that enough?